Imagine fighting for a country that doesn't even see you as a full citizen. You're risking your life on the frontier, protecting settlers who might refuse to drink from the same water fountain as you. You're wearing the uniform with pride, but back home, your family can't vote in half the states. That was the reality for the Buffalo Soldiers, and their story is one of the most complex chapters in American military history. If you enjoy stories like this, consider liking and subscribing. It really helps reach other people who might enjoy these historical deep dives. Also, drop a comment where you're watching from, and thanks for being here. The Civil War ended in 1865, and America faced a massive question. What happened to the nearly 180,000 soldiers who fought for the Union? Most are expected to be sent home and forgotten. But in July 1866, Congress made a decision that would reshape the American West. They authorized the creation of 6 all-black regiments for the peacetime army, the first time African Americans could serve as professional soldiers outside of wartime. The War Department organized these men into the 9th and 10th Cavalry Regiments, along with 4 infantry regiments that would later consolidate into the 24th and 25th Infantry. These weren't token positions. These regiments received the same mission as their white counterparts: secure the western frontier. The difference: they'd do it while facing discrimination from the very people they were protecting. While white officers commanded the black regiments, many were reluctant to serve alongside them, a reflection of the deep-seated racism of the time. Many who volunteered did so because it meant faster promotions, not because they believed in equality. Colonel Benjamin Grierson of the 10th Cavalry became known for defending his soldiers against racist treatment, though he was the exception rather than the rule. The soldiers themselves came from diverse backgrounds. Some were former slaves who'd never learned to read. Others were educated freedmen from northern cities. Many were Civil War veterans who understood military life. They enlisted for $13 a month, steady pay when most opportunities were closed to black Americans. But they wanted more than money. They wanted to prove something to a nation that doubted them at every turn. And they were about to earn a name that would become legendary. Nobody knows for certain how these soldiers got the name Buffalo Soldiers, and that mystery has created several competing theories. The most commonly cited explanation involves the Cheyenne warriors they encountered in combat. According to this account, Native Americans noticed the soldiers' dark curly hair and thought it resembled a buffalo's mane. Others believe the name came from the soldiers' fierce fighting style, comparing them to the buffalo's reputation for strength and resilience when cornered. A third theory suggests the connection came from the buffalo hide coats some soldiers wore during winter campaigns. Whatever the true origin, something remarkable happened. The soldiers embraced the name. They wore it as a badge of honor. The 10th Cavalry even incorporated a buffalo into their regimental crest. The relationship between Buffalo Soldiers and Native American tribes was complicated and often marked by mutual respect between warriors, even as they fought on opposite sides. Many Native Americans recognized the soldiers' courage and discipline in battle. What's documented is that Native American warriors gave these soldiers a name, which itself indicated a level of recognition they often didn't receive from white America. Letters and accounts from Buffalo Soldiers show that they took pride in the nickname. Private William Christie of the 10th Cavalry wrote to his family describing how the name represented their determination to succeed despite facing obstacles from all sides. They weren't just fighting Native American warriors on the plains. They were fighting for dignity in a nation that denied them basic rights. The irony wasn't lost on them. They served a government that wouldn't protect their families from violence in the South. They defended settlers who often treated them with contempt. Yet they performed their duties with exceptional professionalism. And the nickname Buffalo Soldier became synonymous with courage. When soldiers wrote home or talked among themselves, they used the term with pride. It meant they were tougher, more resilient than ordinary soldiers. They'd earned respect the hard way. What they didn't know yet was just how much that respect would be tested in the decades ahead. The Buffalo Soldiers' mission list reads like a job description for the hardest, most dangerous work in the Army. They protected railroad construction crews laying track across hostile territory. They guarded telegraph lines connecting the growing nation. They escorted mail coaches, cattle drives, and settler wagon trains. They mapped vast stretches of uncharted territory. They built roads and forts in some of the most unforgiving terrain in North America. And they fought. Over a 30-year period, Buffalo Soldier regiments participated in nearly 200 major and minor engagements across the western frontier. These weren't ceremonial skirmishes. These were brutal campaigns in the Apache Wars, conflicts with Comanche and Kiowa warriors, and countless smaller confrontations that never made it into history books. The numbers tell a story of exceptional discipline. Buffalo Soldier units had the lowest desertion rates in the entire U.S. Army, despite facing worse conditions and treatment than white soldiers. Their court-martial rates were similarly low. When the Army needed reliable troops for the most difficult assignments, they increasingly turned to the 9th and 10th Cavalry. In 1877, the 10th Cavalry fought in the Battle of Las Animas Canyon against Apache warriors. The soldiers pursued them through treacherous mountain terrain in freezing conditions, demonstrating the endurance that became their trademark. That same year, elements of the 9th Cavalry engaged in the Victorio campaign, tracking the Apache leader Victorio across hundreds of miles of desert. The Spanish-American War in 1898 brought Buffalo Soldiers to national attention in a new way. The 10th Cavalry fought alongside Theodore Roosevelt's Rough Riders at the Battle of San Juan Hill in Cuba. Roosevelt himself, despite his complicated views on race, acknowledged their bravery in combat. The 9th Cavalry also distinguished itself in Cuba, fighting in intense tropical heat against Spanish positions. After Cuba, Buffalo Soldiers deployed to the Philippines during the Philippine-American War. They served on the Mexican border during tensions with Pancho Villa. Some units even saw service in World War I, though by then the segregated structure was being questioned by a new generation. Throughout all these deployments, Buffalo Soldiers received inferior equipment, were stationed at the worst posts, and were paid the same as white soldiers while being denied the same opportunities for promotion. Yet they maintained their reputation for excellence. 23 Buffalo Soldiers earned the Medal of Honor for their service, the nation's highest military decoration. But their contributions went beyond combat in ways that might surprise you. Here's something that might surprise you. The Buffalo Soldiers were among America's first national park rangers. Starting in 1899, troops from the 9th Cavalry were assigned to patrol Yosemite National Park, and the 24th Infantry protected Sequoia National Park. These soldiers spent summers in the Sierra Nevada, stopping poachers, fighting forest fires, and building trails that visitors still use today. Captain Charles Young, one of the first black officers to command Buffalo Soldier units, oversaw much of this park work. His troops built roads, constructed ranger stations, and established the infrastructure that made these parks accessible to the public. They did this while still facing discrimination from visitors who didn't want black soldiers in positions of authority. But not every chapter in Buffalo Soldier history reflects well on the institution. The Brownsville Affair of 1906 stands as one of the most troubling incidents. After an alleged shooting incident in Brownsville, Texas, where townspeople claimed soldiers from the 25th Infantry had gone on a rampage, President Theodore Roosevelt dishonorably discharged 167 black soldiers without trial or opportunity to defend themselves. No evidence ever conclusively proved the soldiers' guilt, and many historians believe they were scapegoated due to racial tensions in the town. It took until 1972 for the Army to reverse these discharges, and by then, only one soldier was still alive to receive an honorable discharge. The discrimination Buffalo Soldiers faced wasn't limited to one incident. They were frequently denied service in restaurants near their own bases. Towns near Army posts sometimes refused to allow them entry. White officers often prevented them from receiving promotions they'd earned. The contradiction was stark. Trusted to defend the nation, but not trusted to use the same facilities as those they protected. Despite these obstacles, Buffalo Soldiers continued to serve with distinction. During the punitive expedition into Mexico in 1916, the 10th Cavalry engaged in the Battle of Carrizal. Though outnumbered, the Buffalo Soldiers fought effectively and conducted an organized withdrawal under fire. By the time World War II ended, pressure was mounting to end military segregation. President Harry Truman issued Executive Order 9981 in 1948, mandating the integration of all U.S. armed forces. The change happened gradually, but the era of all-black units like the Buffalo Soldier regiments came to an end. The proud lineages of the 9th and 10th Cavalry were absorbed into integrated units. The last surviving Buffalo Soldier, Mark Matthews, passed away in 2005 at age 111. Another veteran, Robert Dixon, who served in an integrated descendant unit that maintained the Buffalo Soldier legacy, died in 2024. Their passing marked the end of a living connection to this extraordinary chapter of American military history. But their legacy raises questions that we're still wrestling with today. The Buffalo Soldiers' legacy is complicated, and that's exactly why their story matters. These men embodied courage and professionalism while serving a nation that systematically oppressed them. They fought in wars against Native American tribes who were themselves victims of American expansion policies. They participated in conflicts in the Philippines and Mexico that had questionable justifications. The moral complexity is profound. Modern scholarship wrestles with how to honor the Buffalo Soldiers' bravery while acknowledging the problematic nature of some missions they carried out. They fought against Native American tribes during the Indian Wars, enforcing policies that led to the destruction of indigenous ways of life. From one perspective, they were heroes defending settlers and building a nation. From another perspective, they became part of a system that enabled colonization and displacement. Some historians argue that judging 19th century soldiers by 21st century standards misses the point. These men had limited options in a deeply racist society. Military service offered dignity, steady pay, and a chance to prove their worth as citizens and men. They didn't create the policies they enforced. They operated within a system that gave them limited agency. They were soldiers following orders in a system that gave them few alternatives. Others contend that this explanation, while true, doesn't fully address the harm done to Native communities or to Filipino independence fighters. The Buffalo Soldiers' service, however honorable their individual conduct, contributed to campaigns that historians now recognize as unjust. This doesn't diminish their personal courage, but it does complicate the simple hero narrative. What's clear is that the Buffalo Soldiers deserve to be remembered as full, complex human beings, not simplified symbols. They were men who chose the best option available to them in an unjust system. They served with distinction despite facing discrimination from the government they fought for, and sometimes from the people they protected. They built infrastructure that Americans still benefit from today. They proved that black soldiers could perform any mission as well as or better than their white counterparts, helping pave the way for eventual military integration. Their story reminds us that history is rarely simple. People can be both victims and perpetrators, heroes and participants in injustice, often simultaneously. The Buffalo Soldiers fought for freedom while serving a government that denied freedom to people who looked like them. They enforced policies against Native Americans who were fighting for their own freedom and survival. These contradictions don't cancel each other out. They coexist, making the story more important to tell, not less. When we talk about the Buffalo Soldiers today, we honor their service and sacrifice while acknowledging the complex historical context. We recognize their role in African American military history as pioneers who proved Black Americans' capabilities in military service. We also recognize that the history of westward expansion involved tremendous suffering for Native peoples, regardless of who carried out specific military actions. The Buffalo Soldiers' legacy teaches us to hold multiple truths at once. They were brave, they were skilled, they were proud. They served a flawed nation with dignity, and their service took place within systems of oppression that affected multiple groups in different ways. Understanding all of this makes their story more meaningful, not less. If you want to learn more about this chapter of American history, I encourage you to visit the National Museum of African American History and Culture's materials on the Buffalo Soldiers, or read first-hand accounts from soldiers themselves. History is always more complicated than any single video can capture, and these men deserve to be understood in full, with all the complexity their story entails. Their service mattered, their sacrifice mattered, and their story, with all its contradictions and complexity, still has something to teach us about courage, dignity, and the ongoing struggle for equality in America. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the Buffalo Soldiers' story. If you made it this far, you're clearly someone who appreciates real history told with honesty and respect. If you haven't already, a like and subscribe would really help us continue bringing you these untold American stories. It makes a huge difference in reaching others who value this kind of content. What historical topic should we cover next? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. Whether it's forgotten heroes, controversial events, or complex figures from history, we want to know what stories matter to you. And if you found this valuable, share it with someone who loves diving deep into history. There's always more to discover. See you in the next one.